This video continues the discussion of Hadrian. Once again, he was this uh, very well traveled, very well educated emperor, considered one of the better emperors um, of the Roman Empire. Here's a statue of him in a military garb, and he's in this walking contrapposto, as we've seen before. And his head turned to the side. And interesting, in some ways, this copies the Augustus Prima Porta because he has the laurel wreath on him indicates his citizenry, his political citizenry, while he wears the body armor of a soldier, because he will be in charge of political affairs, religious affairs, as well as military affairs. Now, as I said in the last video, he traveled the empire much, building its infrastructures. And one of the places he did a lot of work in is in Athens, because he went to college in Athens. Athens, along with Alexandria in Egypt, had become the two major college towns of the ancient world. And he went to Athens, and there was philosophers that taught, all the different types of philosophy. And he would build some wonderful structures in Athens, like on the top right, the temple to Olympian Zeus, and on the bottom, Hadrian's library, which you can still see to this very day. Here's another shot of the temple to Olympian Zeus, these large, very tall Corinthian columns with nice fluting. In between that and the older part of the ancient city, where the Greeks had already built a lot, he put a gate in between. So when you walk through from this side, it would say "Welcome into the old Greek Athens." But if coming from the other side, it would say "Welcome to Hadrian's Athens." And you can't see it, but if you look at the top of the bottom arch and you see a rock there, that's the foundations of the Acropolis. So when you'd walk through, you would see the Acropolis. And there's still a lot of stuff in Athens. He built a water system in Athens that lasted until the 20th century, and was only replaced because when the Americans who were living there wanted it replaced. The locals just thought it worked just fine. As a matter of fact, there's part of it that goes underneath the American School of Classical Studies in Athens. He would also travel over to Turkey and go to Ephesus, where he'd build the Library of Celsus, shown here on the left. On the bottom, you can see it more from a distance, but you can see the size of the site there. This is the Ephesus of St. Paul, right? The letter to the Ephesians. It's a huge site on the west coast of Turkey. I've not been to it. But if we look at this Library of Celsus, we see once again this tendency in the 2nd century, especially with Hadrian, of alternating these sort of recesses that are coming out, back and forth, back and forth. So we can go on the bottom here, we can see the parts that project out, have these niches for sculptures, and then there's a doorway, then it projects out in a doorway, projects out in a doorway. And on the top, we see the same thing, except that notice that the pediments change what they're over. They're over the windows on the second shelf. And then we can see also a change going between these arced pediments and triangular pediments. So this was very popular in architecture at the time. Ephesus is sort of a strange place. They were known for what's called the Ephesian Artemis, this Artemis that with many breasts. And there's many statues of it. I don't know why this is an Artemis, who's usually considered a virginal queen rather than Aphrodite. But this was perhaps something that St. Paul really didn't like. You can see in the map in the bottom left that Ephesus, in the red there, is along the Aegean coast. And there have been great excavations there that have revealed wonderful amounts of Roman frescoes and mosaics. You can see, now that you know that on the top left and right, there's a lot of those Style 3 paintings, very similar to the ones we saw at Nero's Golden House. Now, as he traveled through, he would go south, and he would have to deal with a revolt from the kingdom of Judea. A guy by the name of Simon Bar Kokhba led a revolt that Hadrian seriously punished, and caused it increased the diaspora of the Jews even more so than when Titus destroyed the temple, which they were still upset about. This is the one time that Hadrian really lost his cool, and was really ruthless in his suppression of the Jews. And we see another arch like this down at Herash in Jordan. Um, Once again, see the things come out and then recess back in. We see the broken pediment on the top where the corners of it jut out farther. But we also see a triple arch here, which was the first we will see, and we'll see another one with Constantine. Now, one thing to recognize about Hadrian is that he was gay, and this was not that big of a deal to the Romans. And he traveled with his younger lover, who is shown frequently and for whom there's a lot of sculptures. The one on the right is typical of many, many sculptures of him. He stands in that position, he's unshaven and deep locks of hair. And when Hadrian was traveling the Nile with Antinous fell off the boat and died. And so he built a city in honor of him called Antinopolis. And you can see the remains of it on the bottom. So this was a hardship that Hadrian suffered. But he was very well liked by the Romans. We can see here that he's receiving acknowledgement from the goddess Roma on the left. He's on the far right. Roma is basically a deified country. It's their form of nationalism. And we can see the men in the back in shallower relief like we've seen with Roman sculptures before. And it's amazing. There's so many sculptures of Hadrian all around. You run into him throughout the empire. And here in this wonderful Egyptian porphyry, we'll see with the tetrarchs. And he dresses up like the Pontifex Maximus. And with that, we'll pick up Marcus Aurelius.